If God decides at 75, well, Omobolande, there's a lady down the street, that needs a mother figure, for example, and she's only going to be there for 7 minutes. If you don't get there in 7 minutes, she's going to leave and maybe go and take some action that's either going to lead to the loss of her life or some very irreparable damage. And it says you need to go there now, and you have just 7 minutes to get there. At 75, will I be able to make that step and get there in 7 minutes? Or will it take me that 7 minutes to stand up from my bed? Hello, welcome to another episode of Audacity with PS. It has been such an amazing time so far. We have been loaded with so much knowledge. I hope that you have actually been taking note of these things and working them out, right? Because, all the things we have learned, very practical, very applicable, and we're going to have another amazing time today. If you have not yet done it, please go ahead and share this link. Let's get this across to many more people. And, like the video. If you've not subscribed as well, please make sure you do that. I'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and do that. In the meantime, I just want to appreciate our senior pastors, Pastor Shola and Pastor Tokwe Okodua, for accepting and running with this vision called The New, and the many fruits that have come out of it, of which Audacity with PS is one. Not many people really have that opportunity to be a part of an army that has a vision that's running with a goal, and if you're a part of that, you should be thankful. Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma, for what you're doing for us. All right, so I believe we have all had time to share it, and we're going to dive right in. So I feel like when you see me, you already know I'm going to talk about health, right? So today we're going to talk about your health and well-being. And when I got the topic, I was really happy because one, it shows what an wholesome church we are, what an wholesome army we are, but also because I feel like Christians tend to submit every other part of their lives to God, but when it comes to their body, it's almost like, no, you can't have that, right? So I feel like the first thing I want you to know is that your body is actually a tool for God. It's not yours to do with as you please, right? We're very quick to say, oh, my life is not my own, to you I belong. But when it comes to your body and what you do with it, what you feed on, how you take your time, how you do things that you do, there's still a lot of holding on to that lordship over your own body. And, I was thinking to myself the other day about how, it says that Caleb at 18, was able to say, oh, I'm still going ahead. I want to go and take the land because I'm well and able. I'm as strong as when the promise was given to me. And I was asking myself, if God decides at 75, well, Omobolande, there's a lady down the street, that needs a mother figure, for example, and she's only going to be there for 7 minutes. If you don't get there in 7 minutes, she's going to leave and maybe go and take some action that's either going to lead to the loss of her life or some very irreparable damage. And it says you need to go there now, and you have just 7 minutes to get there. At 75, will I be able to make that step and get there in 7 minutes? Or will it take me that 7 minutes to stand up from my bed because of how I've treated my body in the past, right? So we need to understand that our body is a tool for God. Without your body on this earth, there's a limit to what you can do. There's long life. God has promised us long life, and that is great. But you also have a part to play. There's long life. I say to myself, there's long life that has, diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, and all of those things. And there's actual long life that there's good health in it. Which one do you want, right? So I'm going to give you a few pointers today, hopefully, that will help you take the steps that you need to get to that place that you need to be. So the first thing I want to talk about is rest. Funny thing is, I'd initially put it as the last thing on my list, but for some reason, it's here at the top. Adequate rest, right? And I split that into good sleep and distressing or stress coping mechanisms. I know that it's your youth, it's our youth, I'm still a youth, right? It's the time that you have all the energy to do all the things that you want to do for God. It's the time that you want to take nations, but you don't have to do that at the expense of your health. That's why you have wisdom, right? Christians need to stop being so focused on chasing the power and neglecting wisdom, right? We need to stop focusing on chasing the power and neglecting wisdom. God has given us both the wisdom and the power, right? It says Christ is that to us. Christ is the wisdom and the power of God to us. We cannot continue to flout principles all in the thought of, oh, if I get ill, maybe I'm going to pray for myself. What if you use that time that you used to pray for yourself to actually pray for someone else, right? And focus that energy on them. So you need to get adequate rest. You need to have good sleep. It needs to not be a norm to say, oh, I'm running on 2 hours of sleep and that's fine with you. And you're, oh, I'm running on 2 hours of sleep. No, your body needs adequate sleep. Whatever you do not give your body, best believe your body is going to request for it. That's how God has made it. So you need to give your body adequate sleep. And you need to give your body quality sleep, right? There's a lot of, you wake up and you're feeling so tired and it's almost like there's no difference between when you slept and, when you were still awake. And usually it's a result of the activities that we do around our bedtime. So if you can create a bedtime routine for yourself, usually that involves no screens. I know it's hard, but usually that involves no screens, get into a nice atmosphere where your body can have time to relax and actually get into the quality of sleep that you need to have. The second thing that I want to talk about where rest is concerned is your distressing or stress coping mechanisms. We all need to have that. Especially if you're living in this Lagos that we all are in, we all need to have that stress coping mechanism. And it doesn't have to be something so elaborate. It could just be you taking that time to say, oh, this is when I want to study or meditate on scripture, or I want to play games, or I want to watch a movie or read a book. But just having that time, to distress, let go of the stress of the day and let your body get into rest. And you can actually distress while you're still at work. You're sitting at your computer maybe, and it's starting to get so hectic, your head is getting hot, as we say. You don't have to continue just staring at the screen and hoping that some miracle will happen. You can take a 5-minute break. Take that time to walk around your office, go say hello to some colleagues here and there, and then get back to what you're doing. Most times we have realized that by the time you even get back to the work, because your mind is fresh, you're able to deal with the issue, more than how you could deal with it before. So please, get adequate rest, good sleep, and distressing mechanisms. All right. The second thing that I want to talk about is your diet. I feel like in this times, let me put it that way, there's a lot of, too much salt, too much sugar, too much processed food, too little water, too little vegetables, too little fruits, large quantities. Sometimes I see what some people are about to eat. And I'm wondering, is there a well somewhere down there, right? I have this theory where I say, because your stomach is actually made of muscle. I have this theory where I say, whatever you give your stomach, it's going to adapt to that. If you keep feeding in large quantities, the first day you might feel like, oh, I'm a bit uncomfortable, or I feel bloated, or I feel like, I've eaten too much. But if you keep doing that, your stomach is actually going to enlarge to accept the volume that you're giving it. And you really don't need that large volume. Right, so we need to watch the quantities we're eating. We need to watch the things we are eating. We need to watch when we are eating. I like to say, normally some people would say 7, 8 p.m. you should have had your dinner, get ready for bed. I know the peculiarities of our time, so I try to say, at least by 9, you should have had that. You should not be in the kitchen by 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. trying to turn eba or poundo or something like that, right? So we need to watch when we eat as well. The third thing I want to talk about is exercise. And I feel like, these things are stuff that you've probably heard before, but it's because they are principles. And life is guided by principles, right? The same way we have principles that ensure financial increase, that ensure, career progression, business increase, even your spiritual growth. It's the same way that we have these principles that ensure that you have good health. And as long as you continue to stick with these principles, right, then you're able to maintain the good health that you're supposed to. So the third thing is exercise. The science says that I should have at least 150 of moderate aerobic activity per week. It might seem like a lot, so I usually just break it down for my patients and say, try to do at least 30 minutes per day. And you might not start off doing 30 minutes. That's fine. If you can start off with 10 and then just have these gradual increases, right? And you don't have to wait, because I feel like some people now have just taken this as an excuse where it's, oh, I'm waiting to register in a gym, or oh, I'm waiting to get money to pay a coach, a fitness coach or something. You really don't have to wait till that. They will help with accountability. They will help with the specific exercises that you should do. But if you're not at that stage yet, it's not an excuse not to do it. It could just be a walk around, your street or your estate or wherever it is. It could be you, for example, if you take buses, you could stop at a bus stop before your actual bus stop and just take the walk down to your house. If you take a car, if you drive a car, you could just decide one day, I don't want to drive the car, and just, take a public transport instead, so that you can have this period of walking in between. But we need to inculcate exercises into all that we do. All right. The fourth thing I believe that I want to talk about is regular checkups. And that we divide into annual checkups and, other checkups that you're supposed to do on a regular basis. The annual checkups, like you can hear from the name, you're supposed to do it annually. So we advise that at least once every year, you should have a full body workup. That would include your BMI, which will help you know, if you're overweight, if you're obese, if you need to work on your weight. That would include your blood pressure, your blood sugar level, the full blood count. That's a test that they will do. They can check your urine. They'll probably do a liver and a kidney test as well. Those are usually the basic tests that we do. If you're under HMO coverage, for example, and your plan can go higher, but if you have some money that you can add to the basic things that we do, then you can go ahead and do an ECG as well. That will check your heart activity. You can see an eye doctor. You can see a dental practitioner, and just do the full thing if you can. But at least once a year, make sure that you have this basic test done. There are a number of diseases that we call silent killers. Topmost of that is hypertension. And the thing with them is most times you really don't start to see symptoms until, a lot has gone on behind the scene. So by the time you're seeing symptoms, it means that it has been occurring for a while, or it has gotten to a value that is really high. But if you have this habit of checking regularly, then you're able to catch it early on. All right. The other one, apart from the annual checkup, is just a regular checkup. And usually that just involves your blood pressure, if you can throw in the blood sugar as well. Usually I say at least quarterly, try to get that done, at least on a quarterly basis. If you can do monthly, all well and good. If you can't, at least on a quarterly basis, try to get that done. And these things don't necessarily have to take time, because I understand, we're career professionals or we're businessmen and women. We're doing a lot, we're getting bombarded. Maybe you even have a family. There's a lot on your plate. But you can find time. A number of hospitals are open on weekends. You can just take a Saturday, just schedule. Usually within 2 hours, 3 hours, you're done. Just schedule 2 to 3 hours on a Saturday and just speak to a hospital and say, you want to come in to have this. Usually when you say annual check, they already have a test or a plethora of tests that they run. And then they can run that by you, and you can tick off what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And then for the regular checks, your usual pharmacy actually has a SFIG. That's what we call the machine that we use. And you can just walk in at any time in the evening or on a Saturday, on a Sunday, whenever it is, and just have them check your blood pressure or check your blood sugar, and that can tick off your quarterly check. All right. The other thing that I want to talk about is vaccinations. Vaccination is not just for children. I'm sure there's still some people that probably haven't taken the COVID vaccine. I understand the whole issue around that, but there are vaccines that have been available that were not produced in a short time, and we're still not taking them. What those vaccines do is that they prevent you from the exposure. They prevent you from, coming down with all these diseases that they prevent. While we're on vaccination, I just want to also touch on supplements. Supplements are not demons. It doesn't mean that you're taking drugs to treat something, right? It's what it is. It's called supplements because it's supplementing something. We realize that a number of times the diet that we take really isn't enough to give us the adequate vitamins and minerals and all of the things that we need. So that's where the supplements come into play. They are able to add on to what you're getting from your diet. All right. The other thing I want to touch on is when you're sick or when you come down with something, please visit the hospital. Doctors are not the devil. We hear testimonies and the person is like, God shamed my doctor. No, God did not shame your doctor. Your doctor was put there by God, right? We have Christian people that are practicing. Please visit a hospital if you're not feeling well. Do not self-medicate. Do not just go to a chemist or a pharmacist and just say, I'm having this or I'm having that, and then have them prescribe stuff for you. A number of times the malaria or typhoid that you feel like you're treating is really not malaria and typhoid sometimes. It might just be stress. It might be that you have a viral respiratory tract infection. There are so many things that usually present in the same way. So until you see an actual physician that can, eradicate all these other things and narrow down on what the actual problem is, then you might just be treating amiss. So please see a doctor, go to a hospital if you fall ill. The final thing I'm going to touch on is your social connection. I'm not sure how many people, thought I was going to put that in there, but your social connection matters a lot. Having good relationships. Even science has decided or has confirmed that people that have good relationships tend to live longer and healthier. So if you want to live longer and not just live longer, but actually have a healthy life, you really need these relationships. You need people that you can pour into. You need people that can comfort you. You need people that can strengthen you. You need these connections. And I feel like it's so great that in the new we're focusing on communities, right? So you need to ensure that you're plugged into your community, whether it's a tribe, whether it's an interest group, whether it's your service team. Just make sure that you have the right relationships around you to strengthen you, and everybody can lift each other up at the same time. All right. So before I close, I just wanted to touch on, what to do in case of an emergency. The first thing that I listed out was for you to remain calm. I know it is hard because, there's an emergency and you're probably fretting, but we've realized that you have a tendency to make lesser mistakes if you're not fretting, if you're able to remain calm. And the case of an emergency is not the time to practice calmness. So you need to practice calmness before the situation arises. So I give an example. Say you're stuck in traffic. You can feel yourself starting to get worked up. Use that as an instance to practice calmness so that if you have an emergency, right, you already have that in place. The second thing, I'm not going to forget that, is that you need to speak the word. And this is going to come out of the abundance of your heart. So it means that you need to have been putting stuff in so that you can say it out when the need arises. So the third thing is that you need to call the emergency number in your city or state. You should have that number by hand. That is, of course, if the emergency number works. If you're in a place where the emergency number does not work, I'm not going to call names, please go ahead and call out for help, right? If you can move yourself or if it's somebody else, then please move the person or yourself to the nearest hospital that you can find. But if you cannot move yourself or the person in case it's not you, then please go ahead and call for help. Shout at the top of your voice. If you have your phone and you can reach out for it, then call someone that will come at that time to help you. All right. So with those things, I believe that, you know what to do in the case of an emergency. So I just have a few assignments for us to do, just to wrap up what we have learned today. The first thing is that you need to know what the emergency number in your city or location is. For Lagos, guys, I've helped you. It's 767 or 112. If you're not in Lagos, please go ahead and find out what that is so that you know what to call or what to dial in the case of an emergency. 2 is that you need to know your neighbors and be friendly with them. You don't want to be the person that because you've been so hostile or so moody or so, what's the word that we use now? When you call for help, they are not willing to respond because you haven't treated them right or because you don't have that relationship. And make sure you have their phone numbers, at least one of them, so you have someone to call in the case of an emergency. The third assignment I have for you is go ahead and know the hospitals in your area. And I'm going to hint at hospitals. There's hospital and there's hospital. Please don't go to some yam or shoot clinic somewhere. Look for the actual hospitals in your area that will be able to attend to whatever issue you bring so that in the case of an emergency, you can go straight there without having to branch at too many stops. All right. The fourth thing is go ahead right now. If you have not had your annual health check done, go ahead and schedule that into your calendar. It doesn't have to happen this month. It doesn't have to happen next month. But sometime this year, please make plans to have your annual health checks done. All right. So the next thing I'm going to touch on is that you need to have an exercise plan. Know what it is that you want to start doing. Together with the exercise plan, know what your diet needs to look like. Know what you need to take out and what you need to put in. Disclaimer here is that it does not help, usually does not work if you're trying to do too much at a time. So take it one step at a time. When you're taking something out, make sure you're replacing it with something. So for example, if you want to stop taking soda, if you're taking soda out, you can replace it with fruit-infused water. That is your replacement. If you're not replacing what you're taking out with something, there's a likelihood that you will fall back into taking that thing. All right. And the final thing is that you need to make a commitment to plug into the communities that you have. Take your relationships strongly. Take your friendships strongly. Take your communities strongly. They are really going to come in more handy than you can imagine. I hope with these things, you have some idea or some extra knowledge on how to maintain a good health and well-being. Please remember that the quality of your life in the future is honestly determined by what you do with your body today. We're going to close with the creed. Please go ahead and say that with me. All right? As sure as God helps me, I will not give up. I will not cave in. I will not quit. I will not fail. I will not fear. I will not die until my job is done and victory is won. I am the new, and I love this church. Go ahead and have a great day. And remember that God wants you to have good health while you're domineering in your space.